Hello and welcome to SueStainable Action here on Cozy Radio, the heart and soul of the city. If you're listening to us right now, you went to audiorealm.com, you typed Cozy, C-O-Z-Y, into the search engine and you pressed the listen icon. I want to thank everyone for joining us for our special edition today. I am proud and humbled to have with me three of the organizers for the protests that are happening in the city of Indianapolis. Folks, please introduce yourselves to our listening audience.
I am Nameless, they, them pronouns. I have been doing community organizing now for almost 20 years in different capacities. And so with all of the things that were going on, I decided that I wanted to do different type of actions and started to really look at who's involved and then who's not involved during all of this Black Lives Matter demonstrations. And so I called some people and we decided that we were going to have an action. We looked around at the room who the people were, and we decided that we would have service industry workers have a walkout. And we said, we all know them, we eat places, we have workplaces, and we know that this is something that people would do in solidarity of Black lives. So that's how it started, and we can go into all of the other details, but basically I had a thought, another friend also had a thought of other things that we could do. We got together, we had a meeting with core people, people got online, Instagram, Facebook, and then came out. We shut down avenues in Broad Ripple. Businesses also walked out. Workers walked out, stopped serving. Some of those businesses just shut down. But they didn't just shut down at some time. They shut down at peak times. My thought also about doing it was that the people who can sit and eat brunch while downtown is burning, you don't get to eat in peace. So, Broad Ripple, Mass Ave, Irvington, Fountain Square. We were already there, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yes, indeed.
Exactly.
What we learned was that there are a lot of people who want to get involved, but don't always necessarily know how.
And are you Nameless 3?
Mm-hmm.
So we have Nameless 1, Nameless 2, and Nameless 3.
That's right.
I hope no one minds the pecking order. It's just how you're lined up in the room.
In realizing this, though, that there's a lot of people who want to show up but don't necessarily know how, all it takes is the leaders in their community to say, hey, we can do this, and they'll follow. They'll come. If you build it, they'll come.
Permission.
What we learned in all of it is that we can go bigger. So we have. We have created a coalition, and our goals are to further mobilize community leaders, of organizations, of unions, of churches, of everyone.
Of nonprofits.
Mm-hmm. NGOs. Mm-hmm. I have about 5 years of community organizing and advocacy work. And so to see this many people moving got my gears going. As Nameless 3.
And I am Nameless 2, and I have a background with organizing unions, and I also have done some community organizing, and so my thought, and right now I work in the service industry, and my thought was, how can I be of service with this? How can I be supportive?
We cannot let this stand. We cannot let this stand.
Exactly.
So how? And you took that how, and you started talking to other community powerhouses to pull together this coalition. And when you built that, when you said, hey, we're going to be down here, people showed up.
400
We had
strong.
about 400 people across the entire city at the same time. And that's another thing. With demonstrating in different ways, it can feel scary to participate when it looks like your numbers aren't big. But just because aesthetically you are not seeing something, it doesn't mean that people aren't there with you in solidarity.
The sit-in Saturday gave all the old farts. I mean, I'm borderline old fart. I'm a boomer, so technically in a lot of people's mind that goes to old fart. But it gave people with less mobility and less stamina and other parts of our diversity pie an opportunity to come and be heard, to be seen as part of the protest.
Exactly. There are no small actions in the revolution.
No, and to be clear, when we did this in Irvington, there were service workers and there were people and families. There were families that said, I'm so glad this was here. Not everybody wants to take their children downtown to possibly get tear gassed. Because it happens.
The fact that our police force, the concept of coming in riot gear to peaceful protest, you keep the riot gear people like half a mile away. You bring them into the picture after people start breaking shit. You don't tell a bunch of people who are there peacefully asking for the police to stop being brutal and murdering our citizens. You don't answer that
With more brutality.
with more brutality.
I'm like, did you prove my point? Yes, you did.
Yes, you
But that's also a tactic. They want that riot, quote unquote,
Exactly.
to ensue, so that they can say, well, this is why we have to be here, even though they instigate it.
Well, see, they haven't quite come to terms with the fact that everybody carries a camera now. And it's obvious that they don't care. They haven't internalized it, and that's because there aren't any consequences.
Well, that is the purpose of the 8 Can't Wait by Campaign Zero. The 8 things that every city can do to reduce police brutality.
Yeah, no, I mean, if
You'd like to read through the 8 Can't Wait real quick?
Well, so just what these things are.
Things that should
if-
already be in place.
Exactly.
They are proven measures that when all of these things are in place.
These 8 things. Just 8. We didn't say 257. I said 8.
8 things.
I'm-
Police brutality
I
and
want
violence.
12, but we'll get into that later.
Police brutality and violence are significantly decreased.
And that's proven because of the departments that have implemented this across the United States of America. When these 8 points are implemented and in action, the statistics improve greatly on the quality of life for my black and brown and red siblings on this planet.
And poor.
Oh, now that's something that's near and dear to my pocketbook. It is a class war.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's a little bit of the part of why we decided to call ourselves We, the We Coalition. There are there are people sitting in ivory towers with giant loaves of bread and then blaming us for fighting with each other over breadcrumbs.
Let them eat ice cream?
If we can come together, we can stop all of this. We can make this happen. Minneapolis, the city council just announced that they were going to disband the police department in Minneapolis. Riots work, apparently. But we can do that everywhere.
It does work. If you look, the 1968 Fair Housing Act was passed and signed into law 7 days of rioting after MLK was assassinated. So 7 days of rioting across the country, and who knows what we might have come out with if we'd kept breaking their shit. But you know what they say on the internet? F around and find out. They haven't been taking people seriously. All the oppressed classes, the half of us who have less money all put together than 8 people on this planet, are a little over it.
When we started it, and I keep saying we, that's why we're the We Coalition. Because we are you, and you are us. People joined Serving Up Justice, passed it around on the internet without one identified leader. People walked out because they already knew they wanted to. We didn't push anything. What was the point? We had a disruption. You had a disruption of service. You had a disruption in the streets, and you had that show of solidarity. Right?
That's what we have to
And
do.
no one knew who did it.
Well,
that
we
was
did it.
improbable. We did it. Oh shit, we did it. We did it.
We did it. You
So
did it.
what that means, and what I feel people really are scared of, is that anyone can do this. So when you are in your nonprofit, when you are at your office, and you saw the post that Black Lives Matter Indy 10 says, "Hey, justice for Deshaun Reed. Email this person. Did you do it? You probably shared it, but you didn't do it. And if you were really sorry, it would be done."
You're right.
Yeah, exactly.
So who are we? We are people who are going to do shit.
Yep.
Performative allyship is deadly.
Let's talk about this.
Yeah.
Ooh.
And
Stop it.
it needs to be dead.
It needs to be held to account.
Yes.
We're not holding each other accountable when we're liking each other's Facebook posts in our own echo chambers. We're not holding each other accountable when someone as a white person finally makes their statement that everybody's just been so anxious for them to hear finally. You know, like, there are people bullying each other about, like, I see your silence, I see your silence, I see your silence. And that's important to call people out in that way. But you're not actually doing anything just by, if all you're doing is just yelling that at people. And you're not actually doing anything if you threaten to block, delete, and unfollow every single person that doesn't agree with you on social media. You just further isolate yourself into an echo chamber. One of the privileges of being white is that you get to disengage from conversations regarding race very easily. Black and brown people,
Whenever
other
you want
people of
to.
color, they don't get to do that ever because it's their lived experience all day, every day. And so when white people deflect because they don't want to deal with it, it becomes more problematic than them having sat out at all.
You know, did they write their congressperson? Have they signed up? You know, you can get an email from the government about your representatives voting and their actions, what bills they've co-sponsored in real time. You get an email every week to know what they're doing or not doing. You know, who you're telling somebody, oh, you're silenced. Well, you know, I do it snarky, but when I find the things that I want other people to understand, I will tweet it and I will tag Todd Young,
Yeah.
Braun, Carson, Hogsett. I just tag them in it, and that young black lady who got clubbed on our street trying to walk away from the curfew when the protest disbanded a week ago Saturday, I think it was, or Sunday.
Disgusting.
He groped her. He groped her, she pulled away, and then stood there while they beat her. I retweeted it and hit my representatives. Nary a word. So there's the emails. There's calling the office.
Yep. Call them out. And that's back to what you were saying about, we were looking around and saying, who's not involved here, who normally would get mobilized? How do we activate them? How do we get them involved? And sometimes with politicians and community leaders, you got to call them out, because otherwise they're going to just stick their heads in the sand and not pay attention to what's going on, because life for them will keep on going. And it's not, people are being murdered.
Yes.
Life is not going to keep on going from here. We are activated. We are not going to stop. We are mad. We are sad. We are grieving.
Yes. And so some people are. I would say some people are sad. They're truly sad.
Right.
Some people are really angry, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was listening to a podcast, Hood Rat to Head Rat. And there are two black people who were just, when I listen to them, I just feel like I'm just talking to my friends, because I'm just yelling like, yes, yes. And so there was a part where they said, if white people were sad, things would change. Mm-hmm. So when white women were upset about Donald Trump grabbing folks and saying, just grab them by the pussy, right? What happened? The Women's March.
Exactly.
And I'm not talking about a little bit. They were just everywhere.
Exactly.
Where are they?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So I know when you and don't give me the excuse, white people, that you don't know what to do, or I'm going to wait for people of color to tell me. I'm sorry, this is a human rights issue. You know what to do.
Yep. Come on.
You're just like the police officer standing there letting your fellow police officer put your knee on people of color's neck. That's what white people are doing when they don't step up, stand up, and fight back.
Exactly. It's not about just protesting. That's one thing. And that's just one thing. That's just showing up and having energy. But who's calling a meeting? Where are the coalitions of social workers going, you know what, let's call a meeting with the mayor. Because I am having to deal with the trauma of people of color every single day. That's what you do. That's what you learned in school, sorta.
But in defense of the frontline people who are actually dealing with different populations, our economic situation is so tenuous that everyone is scared for their job.
Well, what are you willing to do for the cause? Like, black people already experience a disproportionality as far as finding quality employment, keeping quality employment, just because of the systemic racism that exists in almost every single field.
One of the reasons I was really excited about Bernie Sanders' job guarantee of $15 an hour, because when I think about what that would have done for my Near East Side community here that I live in, that to be able to just hand jobs out like candy.
If saying how you feel, and if what you feel is just and right, if you're afraid to say it, look at that as a larger problem. Don't recoil. Don't come back inside of here the way that white people have the privilege to do, and just ignore it because, well, I don't want to lose my job. They can't fire all of you.
Still, that's like, people are dying, but I need this job, and I'm gonna go in on social services right now, okay? Because of the people that they serve.
Exactly.
Now, you could be a white person of color who is a social worker, but it's a systematic thing, right?
Very
Who
much so.
are you serving? And at the end, and it might be whom, I'm sorry, when it comes down to the stress of racism, the stress of COVID, the stress of not having work, the stress of knowing that my sons are old enough to make the decision to go downtown and possibly get shot. Still, even though that's what we're protesting against, do you understand? You don't have time. I feel like, please quit your job if you can't say Black Lives Matter and Black people are the people you work for. Sweetie, you built your career on the backs of Black people having trauma. Please believe that. Poor people having trauma. You perpetuate it because you and your companies don't have anti-racist policies.
Thank you.
Do you? Oh, are you talking about it now? But how are you talking about it? And how are you going to do anything different? That is my challenge to doctors who know that we die because of high blood pressure. Stress. Stress is killing Black people
Yes.
right now. Where are you? Because that's a health crisis.
Yeah.
So think about it in that term and get out of your white fragility. White fragility is dangerous. People talk about white supremacy. White fragility shuts the conversation down, so you don't even say white supremacy.
I think those are the same thing in my head. Seriously, because the fragility, they're acting out, and they have to be the dominant race because they're smaller and not as they're just more fragile.
There's the difference between covert racism and overt racism, right? Like overt racism, the KKK, people committing hate crimes, those kind of things. Like, and there's the covert racism where like people just don't understand that white people don't understand that the entire way that they've ever been raised or lived their life has been completely designed around this system that actively doesn't care about anyone who isn't white.
Anyone who wasn't listening to the 11 o'clock show, I highly recommend reading a book called The New Jim Crow. Also Dying of Whiteness. But, and the third book recommended in that 11 o'clock show is The Rise of the Warrior Cop.
Who said that? I'm like, can we have a show about that?
Oh my gosh.
It is disgusting because it puts you, it's this history that is so good, and you go, oh, this is how it went from like people who were watching over slaves to what we have, which is this militarization of the police.
Exactly.
Oh, it's such a good book.
Okay.
And it's a long book. Get it in audio and just like...
And live with it.
It's hard. It's hard. But I would also say The End of Policing and Robin DiAngelo's White Fragility.
See, folks, now you have your action for sustainable action, and we put a lot of reading. We put a lot of reading on everybody's list today, but that's very little price to pay to lose your fragility.
Think of just not going into Netflix and zoning out, but tuning into some factual things. One thing that I love about the book of White Fragility is that white people, and Martin Luther King said it, that they just don't think they have anything to learn. Now we're at the crucial point that, I guess I have things to learn. So I really hope you do. That is the charge.
Yeah.
And don't ask people of color unless you are paying them.
It is not the job of people of color to walk white people through things that we as white people should have done 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, whatever, you know.
I would settle for 400.
But it's all very deeply rooted, though. Everything leads to another thing. There is so much to dismantle here. And dismantling your own white fragility is a constant job for the rest of your life. It is your responsibility for the rest of your life to do this. That work never ends.
I was raised white.
It's a relationship with yourself that you have to cultivate. You got to go deep, do some deep shadow work inside of yourself, and realize that even though it's not enough to not be racist, you have to be anti-racist, and you have to understand what the difference is.
Agreed.
And there's a book called How to Be Anti-Racist by Ibram K. Kendi, or Kendi K. X. You can Google it.
But never forget, Google. The entire wealth of human knowledge is in most people's pockets at all times.
But we encourage you to look it up and then order it from your local bookstore.
Yes.
Let's avoid
And
Amazon.
use the libraries. One thing about the library, they'll say, we are out. When there's a demand, it is a public library. Please get more books. Order it. You can say that.
Yeah.
Yes, you
And
can.
they do that.
They do.
Thank you, public libraries. Keep them funded. Maybe take some funding from the police and go and put it in other spaces that are public.
Exactly.
Well, like our public libraries, all of them across the city are also quasi homeless daycare. Because it's where they can get out of the weather, out of the heat, out of the cold, depending on the season, charge their electronics, and actually have an 18-inch screen to watch movies on, or whatever, during the library hours. And they have been hit horribly by COVID.
Yeah.
With the closing of the library system, this has been a horrid couple of months for that population in our city.
And for children who need another space, who where the libraries are their safe space.
Right.
You know, at one point, kids were just being dropped off at the library.
Right.
And those librarians were feeding those children. Now they have programs where they can feed the children at the libraries. And they can go there after school and they know they can have something to eat. Where else are you getting that? And it's so important to see that when, like COVID affects everyone differently. And we have to find other solutions to help people out.
And right now is a good time for my full disclosure. I co-own the cafe in the lobby of the Central Library.
Okay.
So Double Cupped Cafe, when we open back up, I'll be begging you all to come in and get something to eat. But right now, the building is closed, so I'm thankful to Bernie Sanders for making the Senate keep the pandemic unemployment insurance for self-employed and contract workers, because that is the only reason I am solvent and the only reason we'll have the money to open the business back up when the library opens. So that's the full disclosure on the library. You guys brought it up, so
Yes.
you folks. The hardest part of separating my upbringing is the pronouns of the new wave of things as we evolve in consciousness. It's the pronouns that are the trickiest for me.
It's a new language, and it's just because you have to keep speaking it, and then it just becomes second nature.
Right. Yep.
Once you start introducing yourself and telling people your pronouns right off the bat, and that person hears it and they might start doing it. But everybody's doing it and it's normal.
And let's get back to the subject at hand. I'm going to transition it with, I was raised white in a family that made sure I had black people in my life growing up, where I knew what melanin was when I was like 8 years old, it got explained to me that it was skin deep. But I was raised white. I still went to school with 98% out in rural Indiana. Like, I had several classes during the course of my 12 years where there were no black people or any people of color, because we also had a Hispanic family in my high school. But we have to work on our education system. So it's not just us coming together, the we coalition coming together. What are all we demanding as a group? What are we attempting as the we coalition? What all are we saying? We need this, we need that, we need this, we need that.
Well, so we're working with union leaders, church leaders, there's so many different community organizations and NGOs and nonprofits that have people that want to help but don't necessarily know how. So you reach out to the leaders of those organizations, and it's an attempt to get everybody on at least a similar page, because we have to stay mobilized and we have to keep momentum. We can't lose it now. There's the movement percentage number that there's been research that shows that if 3.5% of a population gets activated and involved in the streets doing the work, the demands of that movement end up getting met. It's the movement number, that 3.5%. At this point, so like Philadelphia had 100,000 people out in the streets last Saturday.
Yeah, I noticed that.
I'm not sure of the exact number, but I'm pretty sure that's close to like 2% or so of the population. They're almost at 3.5. If we get everyone all over the country, everybody's moving right now. We gotta get more people in. Not everybody's comfortable with doing the marches, especially because, I mean, a car barreled through a crowd yesterday downtown.
Yep.
That's not...
Yesterday, what day was that?
Last night.
Or I mean,
Monday.
the date. The 8th. June 8th.
June 8th. Yep. Yes.
Oh, right. We got to keep going, and we can't exhaust ourselves marching every single day as much. Go march if you want to march. Go march.
There's
Absolutely.
so many people. There's so many things to do. There's so much different work that can be done, which is what we is about. Because we are downtown, we are in the office, we are scheduling meetings, we are emailing, we are calling. And one of the things that we talked a little bit about, the 8 can't wait, but let's go into that 8 can't wait. Because can you get on board with that?
Right, just that. I mean,
Yeah.
Everybody can start mobilizing.
These, I don't understand why this isn't our policy already.
right.
It doesn't make any sense to me.
And we're not asking for anything that hasn't been proven and isn't implemented other places. So, Mayor Hodgson, could you implement that? That's the ask.
Yeah.
It's a very bare minimum ask. Like, prior to this weekend, chokeholds were still allowed,
Right.
but not now. Do you hear that, people? Like, things are moving, but we can move it faster when we all know that, hey, there's 8 things, let's just do all 8 to start.
At the beginning of the week, Indianapolis had only had a warning before shooting in place. At this point, the mayor has announced that they're going to start putting all but 3 into place.
And those 3, if you want to review those, yeah, because this is what needs to happen here. So exhaust all alternatives before shooting, and then require the use of force continuum, and require comprehensive reporting. These 3 things are things that can be implemented right now and will, moving forward, prevent a whole other lot of issues,
It's also important to remember that, like, defunding the police
Exactly.
is also a goal.
We're not trying to eviscerate the police department for those of you who just blew a gasket. Defunding means not buying military equipment. It means not preparing for war against your own citizens. It means taking that money and putting it into social programs, into education,
mental health and addiction,
Back to the libraries.
Parks. We've been put them back into the parks, right?
We've been actively defunding all of these other things for
Right.
decades now to give more money to a public service as it's supposed to be that's not working. And if we put money into all of these other things, that's proven that crime rates decrease. You don't need the cops. We don't need them the way that we have them.
And
go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to also mention that the National Black Lives Matter movement has lists of actions for every day of things that people can be doing, and I think last Tuesday was this cut ties, certain organizations and certain connections, cut ties with the police department on top of, working more towards reallocating funding.
Get our police out of schools. Why do schools not have nurses? Why do schools not have guidance counselors? Why do schools not have these things inside of them to actually help students have like a prosperous education? But there's a cop
Who can arrest them?
Right.
Yeah, that makes no sense in a society that we care about all of our children. If we cared about all of our children. Now myself, I would like to see a review of the city's insurance policy, because we have to have an insurance policy to pay for civil lawsuits and actions and such things. So we're paying a premium. The taxpayers are paying a premium. I've heard it floated by some individuals who are capitalists that, well, why don't we treat this in a capitalist manner? So we take the insurance rate that we get for the city of Indianapolis, and then we divide it by the individual police officers, and then we let the insurance company look at the risk assessment on individual officers by having access to their disciplinary record and all the things like our driving record affects our insurance.
Right.
Their policing record will affect their personal policing insurance. And in that sense, I'm willing to pay the base rate for every police officer in this city. But anything that goes over that base rate,
needs to come out of their pensions.
their pensions, their pocket, either the union or the individual officer should be paying that money, not the citizens of Indianapolis, not the taxpayers here. So that's the financial thing. They think in terms of money. Here is a way to think of it. So I bet we, in the city of Indianapolis, if we went to this brand of policing, I think we could get a better insurance for the policing. I think we could get a better insurance rate overall if we were letting them weed out and charge individuals who might cost them more and more money. I think our group rate would go down. So it's a potential cost savings while promoting better behavior.
So one thing that living on the east side, I've seen, you have so much addiction and mental health issues. And as a citizen, I would like the police not to have to deal with that.
That is something we need to take off their plate.
And it's like it was never on their plate, and yet, as a job description, right?
Correct.
But when we don't have mental health services, then you're going to have police officers having to de-escalate folks who are having a crisis. That's not fair. It's not right. It's not their job. I don't know who funds mental health initiatives, but if we could use some money to go to addiction counseling, outreach, and not just because we need to put them away.
I am totally with you on this. Don't we have like 2 crisis aversion teams now in the police department where there's a mental health person and they go in as a little squad, or they can call this special officer in who has extra training, but we had to...
That still requires the discretion of the officer who's responded to the moment. And if that officer is ignorant to, the fact that this is something to do in this moment, there's no guarantee that that's what's going to happen.
There should not be a gun present in that moment.
Exactly.
Because then there's power. That's not like I said, we need folks who that's their job consistently in our neighborhoods doing that. I can sit outside when Poe's Run was open and watch people pass out from KD.
Yeah.
And then we pull them out of the street. Whose job is it? Is this the health department? This is a crisis.
Yes.
And instead the police are called, the fire department's called, and then it happens again 30 minutes later.
So
These are things, if you're in a
we have to look at
nonprofit,
how we're spending our money.
yeah, spending our money, but how we're doing, what we even ask the police to do. And I said, well, who is supposed to be there? And we need to put them there.
Yes.
Because this isn't just the east side, right? This is
All
every city has a
center. Everyone I've been to.
Correct.
Every urban center I've ever driven into had a place where people told me not to go. So I went there.
And these are things that when people are having their powwows about what to do, that's their job. They went to school, they have PhDs, and we can still, people have master's degrees in public health, and yet this part of the crisis hasn't even been addressed.
Exactly.
Wow. That's also part of white supremacy. I'd rather have them dead or in jail than truly help them in their space, in their own communities. If they didn't come to me, can't do anything.
We're going to let people sit with that for a moment. We're going to take a short break here, folks. This is Sue Spicer with SueStainable Action here on Cozy Radio, the heart and soul of the city. Come back in a couple minutes. Thank you much. Hello and welcome back to SueStainable Action here on Cozy Radio, the heart and soul of the city. If you're listening right now, you stuck with your audiorealm.com, you had Cozy, C-O-Z-Y in the search engine, and you stuck around to listen to our 3 guests today, Nameless 1, 2, and 3, they, them. Folks, here we are. We're back. We've had a moment to reflect on what we've talked about with people. What are the things that we need to drive home?
So I think we mentioned there are people out there doing the work. There's the National Black Lives Matter, there's the Indy 10, the folks that are associated with that. They need help. They are doing the work. They have things that you can be involved in. I encourage people to do the research, find out where you can fit in, what you can do, what service you can provide, and just get out there and do it.
There are leaders on the ground being the point person on very many aspects of what it takes to have a movement. There are many jobs to do that aren't marching.
Exactly.
Right.
So no person can do all things, but all persons can do at least one thing. And there's probably something you're pretty good at. And how can you take the skills that you have in your daily life and apply it to this movement?
Like a week ago Saturday, I took my passenger van and my whiteness and I went downtown and offered rides. I offered witness sitting in my van in my whiteness, talking with people, looking to any way I could help in that moment, knowing that it wasn't my kind of thing to be out on the street, but it was my kind of thing that if people wanted out of there, I was going to give them a ride. And they were going to have my face behind the wheel to get them out. So that was just a little thing that I could do that wasn't me marching, wasn't me rioting. The emails, the phone calls to the folks that are in power, who do hold office. So,
and people know how to do that. Look at Bernie Sanders' campaign.
Right.
Once again, where are the people who, you don't need that black permission from Black Lives Matter to do political action. That is your job.
yes,
Exactly.
So,
what she said, or they them said.
Yeah.
correct.
What we said. What we're screaming.
What we said, what you said,
Exactly.
what we said. So there's also Surge. Surge has white ally, and Surge is serving,
Showing up for racial justice.
Showing up for racial justice.
Which is the SURJ, for those who might be challenged. In what
Find them on Facebook and their website. Their website has resources, but the Indy chapter, they also have what to do at a protest or how to be a white ally. And I would like to see it. I don't know because I don't really look on the page too much, but because I am a person of color, so I'm just saying. I'm like, white person, what do I do for Black Lives? I don't know. No, I know.
Stay black.
Stay alive. Let's see. But Surge, they have these Zoom meetings, and they also have the resources for white people to talk to other white people. When I first heard as a person of color that white people were talking about racism by themselves, it was like, wait, they're segregated? And then I was like, oh yeah. They should, because I don't want to hear it. I'm sorry. I'm so sick of it sometimes. But having those meetings, having those house meetings, having the book studies, you don't have to do it. I love doing book studies. And you can do one of those books that we mentioned earlier, White Fragility. Please get it, do it, read it. Read it to your friends and discuss it. Because it's not for you to discuss intellectually. It is to go into your heart and soul and go, when was the first time I realized that I couldn't talk about race with people without getting upset? We were taught that, right? So anyway, having those type of actions are going to be necessary, because you can't go and say, I'm going to protest with some black people and still fear them and not understand them.
Even if
Just don't understand the fear.
in a perfect world where all of the police's nonsense, their violence, everything that they have done wrong, even if we fix that problem, it doesn't really do much if like society's soul isn't healed.
Yes.
Like this is like white fragility, white supremacy. It is a scar, like on society's heart. Like
one could argue soul. The soul of our nation has been an gaping wound from my study of history, because we've always had a problem because we built the country on the backs of minorities. So without recognizing that, without equalizing the playing field, without bringing the economic aspect into the socio part, without treating each other like human beings on every level. Dental care is health care. All these things. So I'm going to the rise of the warrior cop, dying of whiteness, the new Jim Crow, the end of policing, white fragility, and how to be anti-racist.
If you look online, I'm sure you'll find a club to talk about it with. And the reason I say that, I've been on those things and I've done that. You know, when you read it, maybe as a group at work, it's great, you know, and talk about it. But sometimes then because you have that like similar affect, you know, so when you get to talk to other white folks and people of color, you have this different perspective. But also, what's so great about it is that typically people still feel the same way. I am so sick of letting our white people allowing shame and guilt to freeze them. And
Exactly.
so if you are talking about it and you're like, oh, I don't want to say something wrong, it's like, well, let's just get it out and then we'll talk about it. Because if you're not coming from a malicious space, you're just trying to understand. And so, but that would be the format. Don't, like I said, don't go to a person of color unless you're paying them and talk about this stuff.
Yeah, if you're going to unpack the luggage that your racist ancestors gave you, you better be paying that black person. So, are there any points specifically for our discussion that you want to bring out that we've missed? Because I'm getting ready to ask you what brings you joy.
As our group continues, as our coalition continues, as we continue, what we're working towards is getting people together to utilize each other's resources, to educate each other about how to move forward. If anybody would like to get a hold of us, if they think they got something they want to bring to the table, we want to point them in the right direction, like where to go. That's what we want to do right now. We're working on talking with union leaders, union organizers, again, any kind of community leader, any kind of
If you're in a position of power and wherever your domain is in the city of Indianapolis, you should reach out to the We Coalition. Now, how would they do that?
The We Coalition at gmail.com.
So spell it out. It's THEWECOALITION at gmail.com. Couldn't be any simpler than that. So, and I don't care if you're a leader or not either.
Sometimes no.
Everybody's leader.
Exactly.
Anyone.
If you are compelled to stand up and say something, you're a leader. That's how it works. You do the work, and you're going to look behind you a little while later, and there's going to be people behind you doing the work too. But right now, we have so many point people in place for this. I encourage people to get behind the people who have already been pushing this so that we're not reinventing the wheel, because we can't take the time. It will drag this movement down, and we need the movement to keep moving. So get behind these point people and help them with the load. So, who wants to go first, Namelesses? I want to know what brings you joy. How can you look at all this and sleep?
I'll go ahead. I'm a Nameless too, and I have been thinking about that question, and since I can remember, the thing that has always brought me joy is being of service, and it's pretty much one of the reasons why I want to remain nameless, is because I am here as a servant to the cause. And when I see in little ways, how my people are activated and passionate, and how we can also speak to each other when we're ragey and just come back from that and know that I'm the kind of person that can be like, what do you need? Have you eaten today? Are you drinking water? Let me see you drink that water.
They are very good at that.
That's kind of one of the ways that brings me joy, just to be able to take care of the babies.
For me, Nameless 3, just seeing seeing everyone activated, to see people that in my personal life who were never so charged or driven to do something bigger than themselves before are finally here. They're finally there. And when I'm marching in those streets with people that I love and complete strangers, I feel so filled with love for what is happening and pride in the city of Indianapolis. And that's I think that's what's bringing Nameless 3 the most joy right now.
This is Nameless 1, pronouns they, them. So what brings me joy is that I love who I love. I love them so much. And whether it's a nephew or a niece or my dog or my partner or my friends, like, what brings me joy is having everyone relaxed and feeling safe, and what that looks like. So after our serving up justice action on a Saturday, on a Sunday, I brought out some healing stuff. We did meditation. We played frisbee.
We blew bubbles, had popsicles.
Literally blew bubbles. And went to Family Dollar to get more.
Yeah.
Adults.
The revolution
They
needs
were
bubbles.
I own bubbles. I own bubbles, and you should use them after a rainstorm when plants are coated with water,
Oh, wow.
because they stick and they stay bubbles. Just so you know.
Bubble pro tip.
Yes.
Bubble pro tip. Do
And
it
so,
with
you
the
know,
kids. when
that
they're
brings me
coming
joy because it helps my brain relax. If I wouldn't have done that, then I just go and keep going. And when people talk about self-care, they think, oh, it's just a bath. And I'm like, that's passive. You have to be actively relaxing your mind. Actively going, what can I do? When I'm with my partner, I look at my partner. When I'm with my people, I look at them, I smile at them, I laugh with them, I love with them, I cook for them. These are things that we can do, and it's like, even though it's like, oh, these are things we do every day, but it's so intentional, I'm so mindful to keep that joy, because I refuse to be killed by hate and rage.
Amen.
We have to take care of each other,
Absolutely.
or we're not going to get far.
That makes watching musical comedy movies just really seem petty.
Oh, stop.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Because that's my escapism is, like Pitch Perfect.
Yes.
Because you can go into that woman's world and just go there and hear music and see dancing and yeah, that's I have to go someplace that I am not,
Yes.
Right.
because I live too much in it. Well, folks, this has been an enlightening conversation.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having us.
We
We
appreciate the We Coalition, @gmail.com. This is Sue Spicer with SueStainable Action here on Cozy Radio, the heart and soul of the city. Thank you everyone for listening for our special edition. Get out there and do the work.
Come on, preacher.